I drive a lot for my job, and I don't mean a decent amount. I mean the kind of driving where you stop telling people how many miles you put on your car because it just sounds irresponsible, which means I'm very familiar with traffic. Construction zones, detours, lane closures, that stretch of road that you're pretty sure they've been working on since 2009. And I'll be honest, I don't enjoy waiting in any of those situations. I don't enjoy sitting still. I don't enjoy watching the clock. I don't enjoy knowing exactly where I want to be and not being there yet. But at least that kind of waiting makes sense. You can point to something. You can blame something. There's a reason it's slowed down. There's an accident. There's construction. There's a lane closure. Waiting is frustrating, but it's understandable. But there's another kind of waiting. And this is the one that gets me. One time, I was driving back home from Wichita, back to north central Arkansas. If you've ever made that drive, you know it's not all interstate. Most of it's 2-lane roads, long stretches where there's not much around you. There wasn't traffic, there wasn't construction, nothing was technically wrong. But the road just didn't seem to end. I'd look down and check GPS, and the ETA didn't drop. Because, like a lot of us, I've got this whole little internal game going, trying to beat the ETA every time, and somehow it felt like it was going the wrong direction. Not dramatically, just enough to notice. I wasn't lost. I wasn't off track. I was still heading in the right direction. It just felt like I wasn't getting any closer. And somewhere in that drive, it hit me. This isn't about the road. This is about how frustrating it feels when you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing and nothing feels closer. You're showing up, you're being responsible, you're trying to be faithful. But internally, there's a quiet question. Am I actually getting anywhere? That's the kind of waiting I struggle with the most. Not the obvious kind, the quiet kind. The kind where everything looks fine, but nothing feels like it's moving. And that kind of waiting doesn't usually make us angry right away. It just makes us tired. Welcome to Grace in the Grind, brought to you by Arrow and Roots Coffee Company, where faith meets the everyday. Here we take time to notice God's presence in the middle of life's busiest moments, to find encouragement, clarity, and a reminder of His grace right in the grind of daily life. So grab your coffee, and let's take a sip of this cup together. And before we go any further, let me pause for just a second to tell you what's brewed today. Today's coffee is Coffee Date from Aaron Roots Coffee Company. Brewed in a pour-over, it's one of those cups you don't just drink, you kind of settle into. Easy to keep coming back to, the kind that fits a long conversation. Pour-overs slow you down just enough to notice a little more. And that's probably a good place for us to start today. Today, we're talking about waiting. Not as an inconvenience, not as wasted time, and not as something to just get through. We're talking about waiting as one of the primary places where faith is formed. And I'll say this up front. This is something that I've had to wrestle through personally. Because if I'm honest, I don't usually struggle with waiting itself. I struggle with what I expect waiting to do. I expect clarity, movement, some kind of confirmation that I was on the right track. I expected it to turn into momentum eventually. And when it didn't, that's when waiting started to feel personal. Like I was stuck. Like I was behind. Like maybe I was missing something. And I think if we're honest, that's where a lot of us live. Because a lot of us would say we trust God. But what we really mean is we trust Him to move something, to change something, to open something, to make it clear we're on the right track. And when that doesn't happen, we're left asking, am I still trusting God? Or am I just waiting for something to change? Isaiah 40:31 says, "But those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. That verse we quote a lot, but we don't always slow down enough to sit in where it comes from. Because Isaiah 40 isn't written to people who are just learning patience. It's written to people in exile. People whose lives didn't go the way they thought they would. People who had been waiting not for days or weeks, but years. And earlier in the chapter, they're asking, my way is hidden from the Lord. My cause is disregarded by my God. Isaiah 40:27. In other words, does God even see this? Does this still matter to him? And Isaiah doesn't answer that by explaining their situation. He answers it by reminding them who God is. That he does not grow tired or weary. That his understanding is unsearchable. That he is still sustaining everything. So when Scripture talks about waiting on the Lord, it's not talking about passive patience. The language carries the idea of hopeful, dependent trust. Still looking to God, even when you don't understand what he's doing. Waiting isn't about your strength. It's about who you believe is holding things together while you wait. Here's where I think this starts to drift for a lot of us. And it's subtle. Most of us didn't decide to treat waiting like a transaction. We just absorbed it. If I stay faithful, if I do the right things, if I'm patient enough, then something should move. Because that's how everything else works. You put in effort, you get results. So we carried that into our faith. And without realizing it, we started expecting waiting to produce something we could see. But Scripture never defines waiting that way. Waiting isn't a timeline. It's a posture. It's not about what's happening around you. It's about what's happening in you. While nothing around you seems to be changing. And when it doesn't change, we don't usually say it out loud, but internally we start asking, did I do something wrong? Did I miss something? And I've had to notice this in myself. Sometimes what I was calling trust was actually expectation. Not rebellion, just assumption. That faithfulness would lead to visible progress on a timeline I could recognize. And that's not biblical. That's cultural. So let me slow this down for just a second, because this is where it really matters. Waiting doesn't just delay things, it reveals things. Because when everything is moving, it's easy to feel like you trust God. But when it's not, when there's no feedback, no progress, no clear movement, that's when the question shows up. What am I actually trusting right now? Psalm 27:14 says, wait for the Lord, be strong. Let your heart take courage, wait for the Lord. That repetition matters because waiting takes strength, not to move faster, but to stay. And Psalm 62 says, for God alone my soul waits in silence. Not because everything makes sense, but because trust isn't built on clarity. And I've had to sit with that more than I'd like. Because sometimes what waiting reveals is how quickly I reach for something else when things feel still. Trying to figure it out. Trying to regain control. Trying to create movement. And that doesn't make you unfaithful. It makes you human. But it does show you something important. How much of your peace was tied to progress instead of presence. And grace doesn't show up here to shame you. Grace shows up and says, you don't have to carry that. You don't have to hold this together. That was never yours to sustain. And we see this most clearly in Jesus. In the garden before the cross, he prays, not my will, but yours be done. That's not passive. It's not disengaged. That's trust. In the middle of something that didn't move the way he would have chosen, And if Jesus trusted the Father without demanding a different outcome, then waiting isn't a sign that something is wrong. It may be the place where trust is actually being formed. So instead of asking, how long is this going to take? Maybe a better question is, what is this revealing? What am I trying to rush right now? What feels like it has to change for me to feel okay? And what would it look like to stay faithful there, even if nothing moves yet? You don't need to answer this week. Just awareness, because awareness is usually where surrender starts. If you want to support what we're doing here, one of the best ways is to grab a bag of coffee from Aaron Roots Coffee Company. You get good coffee, and it helps keep these conversations like this going. And honestly, it might also give you a reason to slow down for just a few minutes, which based on today's episode, might be part of the point. If this episode connected with you, don't rush past it. Let it sit. And if you know someone who's been doing all the right things, showing up, staying faithful, but quietly worn out from waiting, send this to them, because a lot of people look fine on the outside and are asking the same question inside. Lord, are we getting anywhere? Thanks for listening to Grace in the Grind, where we keep the coffee strong and our faith steady, even when the road feels long. God is still at work in the waiting. We'll see you in the next cup.